Hello guys, today is the 2nd of July 2019. That's really scary. The older you get, the larger those numbers get. Anyway, this is Cancer Ward episode 5. It's an update. I needed to fill in what's been going on for the last 3 months. It's been about 3 months, I think, since I've done one of these. And we can see the titles around here on the screen. So we'll just go to step right through it real quick. I've got a lot of stuff to get done, and your time is very valuable as well. Just wanted to update on what's going on. I'm still using the GcMAF, which is glycoprotein macrophage activating factor. You can see all about it in a previous video. Then the last Cancer Ward episode. I'm still using it, an incredible product. There's no question that it has boosted my recovery, and I'll get into some of that in a bit. In a number of ways. It works as part of immunotherapy, which you'll note is up in the corner here as one of the titles. And it's because what the idea is that one would want to harden their body and activate all of their own internal defense mechanisms against cancer as a part of the process of recovery. So as to not get the shit again, because there's no profit or pleasure to having cancer whatsoever. It's the worst thing you could ever run into. Anyway, the GCMAF out of GCMafPlus is quite the incredible product. It is a little thing here. It automatically squirts out an appropriate dose. It comes in a cream, or you can get a spray. And you can spray the thing, and I personally think it's better on a mucous membrane. So you could spray it up your nose. Probably you could spray it into your ear with good effect. I think it's best in the mouth. You could use it topically, but absorption rates for various different kinds of skin are hugely affected by things like humidity, ultraviolet radiation, which causes the skin to kind of harden up and form sort of a surface layer. The kind of oils you eat, all different kinds of things affect how well you absorb things through your skin. So it's a little dodgy to use the sprays that way. In my opinion, it's not the best use of them. The spray at this point, I think, is still the most powerful in terms of the GCMAF. Now, GCMAF are macrophage activating factors. And so it's a complex form of a protein, which is an analog of a sugar. And it works with other proteins and other sugars within your system to trigger hunter-killer cells that go on out and do their job and wipe out cancer cells. It's a telling factor or telling aspect of this that oncologists frequently use tests that have a baseline of X number of cancer cells. So in other words, a healthy individual will still have a known number of cancer cells at a certain level that the body continually gets rid of through their immune system. And so it basically, the underlying premise is that the ordinary course of events for humans is to walk along and create cancer cells due to exposure to all of the carcinogens within our environment. And that a certain number of these cancer cells are to be expected, and that the differentiation between a healthy individual and one who becomes ill with cancer is that the healthy individual will have an immune system capable of kicking the cancer cells out. So that being said, that being the baseline for a number of these tests, GCMAF and immunotherapy, as an aspect of immunotherapy, it is really very telling. I mean, very critical to a degree, in the sense that it'll put you over the top, so to speak. So there's a lot of different ways to bump up your immunotherapy or your immune system, so that it in essence is immunotherapy at an anti-cancer level. And some of these things are through harmonizing with various different systems within your body. GCMAF adds a component that you could potentially generate on your own because your body makes GCMAF on its own. But the addition of the GCMAF from an outside source makes it that much easier to direct those molecules to activating hunter-killer cells and thus ridding yourself of the cancer cells. Another way to approach it would be to so plump up your body that your internal GCMAF production was way over the top anyway and could thus scavenge all of the cancer cells and get rid of them. So in that sense, one might seriously attempt to do maximal or optimal nutrition such that your body had everything it needed. However, in these days of electromagnetic radiation beyond all understanding, the Wi-Fi, cell towers, electromagnetic fields everywhere we turn, I don't know that such things as internal GCMAF production support can be as effective as they might have been in past ages, when we didn't have continual degradation through electromagnetic fields of all different kinds. And 5G is just going to make it that much worse because of the frequency of the thing and the narrowness of the bandwidth. It doesn't penetrate far into the skin, but it's going to be very harmful in its effects on the human body. Now, I also wanted to bring up nitric oxide as a potential therapy for all different kinds of diseases, but also for cancer. I should have brought the book out here. I've been reading a marvelous book on nitrate and nitrites, or nitrite and nitrates in human health. And it's a collection of scholarly articles and has all the references, and you can go look up the studies and stuff. And it turns out that a few years back, allopaths were shocked to discover a new organ in the body. Many of them disputed that it was an organ. They were very ticked off that it came up to existence, and they have to deal with it. An allopath, by the way, is a doctor. Somebody trained in the traditional, what we think of as traditional medical school, the general category of medicine. So anyway, doctors were irritated at the discovery of this new organ because it redefines a number of things, okay? And this new organ is the endothelium, and it is an organ that is one cell deep. Now, let me stop for a second and say that this is no barrier to complex organs in the human body. You don't need big masses of cells like in a liver or a brain or something, okay? You can have an organ that is just spread out all over you. Skin. It's the largest organ in the body. What may become found out to be the second largest organ in the body is the endothelium. And it, like the skin, has multiple layers, all right, but not a whole lot of them. On the other hand, your intestines are essentially one cell thick. And then there's a biome, a bacterial layer on the inside of them that does all the transport and then breaking down of the food and so on. So your intestines and your digestive system is basically one cell thick, but it's a complex organ. They've discovered another one of these, this endothelium. The endothelium is a one cell thick layer that lines the inside of the pipes that are in you that carry blood, both veins and arteries. One of the things that the endothelial layer does is that it keeps your veins and arteries healthy. And so here, at a very crude level, is the thinking on this. The endothelial layer works on this chemical called nitric oxide. It produces vast quantities of it. Produces it from essentially two main amino acids, but it requires a couple of enzymes in order to do this. And it converts L-arginine and citrine into nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is known as it's a very weird molecule in the body. Its life is only on the order of half a second or so, and thus it's very difficult to study. So if you're trying to study it in a lab or something, you got to be really damn quick because the stuff goes just poof. And what it does is the endothelial layer on the inside of your pipe that carries your arterial blood or your venal blood back, produces nitric oxide. The nitric oxide actually lines the inside of that pipe and does a number of things. It's a signaling molecule to tell other parts of the body to do shit, get their act together. A lot of it related to your health, and a lot of it related to the production of other enzymatic reactions to environmental stressors. And so nitric oxide is really key in signaling other parts of your body, like the liver and so on, to get it together and produce some reaction to what the hell is going on. And nitric oxide also, it turns out, does some provides a physical component to what they call normotensive pressures. So in other words, your blood pressure. Okay, so the thinking is that blood cells should never, ever, ever touch the actual inside of a vein or an artery. They should be held in suspension by a gas layer of nitric oxide and carbon dioxide and some other gases all around on the inside of that pipe, so that the blood is flowing, basically lubricated, if you will, by this gas layer. And this gas layer is produced by your endothelium. And when the endothelium wants to, or is tasked with signaling something, it drops another nitric oxide into the blood, and off it goes, and it's carried somewhere, and some other thing occurs as a result of this. But this gas pressure, this actual physical pressure, because of the production of the gas inside the closed vessel, affects hypertension. It affects overpressurization. What we have happening, apparently, is that degradation of our bodies produces an endothelial layer that ain't healthy, and thus it doesn't produce the nitric oxide. And this causes all kinds of problems, including hypertension, high blood pressure. And that the nitric oxide production in the body through the endothelial layer is affected by these other complex conditions that we may get into. Cancer, diabetes, all different kinds of immunosuppressant conditions, right? Conditions that cause a suppression of your immune system. And so the thinking is that the endothelial layer can actually become damaged where it can't produce nitric oxide worth a damn, and you need it to do that. So having discovered this, having looked into the literature on it, I discovered that nitric oxide is probably a good thing, and it has a bunch of other functions within the body. It is something that can be supplemented to some degree, but it doesn't do you any good to take L-arginine or L-citrulline as supplements if your endothelial layer doesn't have the enzymes to convert those into nitric oxide. Does you no good whatsoever. So there are a couple of products out there I've discovered, one of which I'm using now, that promise to promote the health of the endothelial layer, as well as pump up supplement the nitric oxide in your system in other ways. And this one outfit even can provide tests that you can, a little spit on a stick test, and it can tell how your nitric oxide levels are. This company is called Human, with two N's on the back end. Now, I don't make any money off of any of this shit. I never promote products unless I use them and I like them. Usually I'll be promoting a category of product like medicinal mushrooms, reishi, chaga, cordyceps, turkey tail, or lion's mane, without ever specifying a producer of those, because I'm not in the business of advertising the product. I want to bring awareness to you of this particular category. There are some conditions that I'm going to go into today with some specific products, because I've either found nothing else on the market that does this, or because I'm so enthralled with its effect, like GCMafPlus and their production of the GcMAF molecules in spray and creams. We'll come back to GCMafPlus in a little bit here again for some other stuff. So Human, with two N's on the end of it, is a company that produces nitric oxide products that aid your health. I've found these things, I've used them now for a little over a week, I think, and I've had some really noticeable results And I'll get into this in a second. So therefore, I'm bringing up the products themselves. Now, I'm using 2 of the products from the human company. And one of them is this lozenge that you use twice a day for the first 30 days and then once a day thereafter. And it's the one that has a tendency to promote the healing of the endothelial layer. And I know that mine has been damaged because my blood system was compromised because the cancer was attached to it and was sucking out and processing so much of the blood through it. And so I have to assume that I'm in that category of cancer-damaged endothelial layer. And you can get, it's actually, cancer damaged is far less of a burden to overcome than, say, diabetes, because of the long-term nature of both. Even with long-term cancer, the long-term nature of diabetes as a degradation is much more systemic. So anyway, just let me show you the product. This is Human in Super Beats. These are the soft chews. So the products are so powerful, you got to be careful about how many you take. You can't just gulp this stuff like candy. So this should never, ever, ever be stored around kids because they'll want to eat it because it has some component of sugar and has a sweet taste to it. Kids can have nitric oxide therapy, but you have to use common sense and use weight measurements and all of that to figure out how much they should be exposed to and whether they really even need it. Kids at that stage, even with the degradation of all of the environment around them, have yet to suffer that, and so they're probably producing maximum nitric oxide. Not so with old farts like myself. So I'm using the lozenges to build up my system over the next, over this first 30 days, and then I'll be in a maintenance dose on it thereafter. And in the meantime, I'm also using, you can take these chews with you, and so you can only have 2 of these a day, so I take them as well, but also intermittently in the day, and I have noticed some effect. One of the things they tout, and it's 100% true, is that you can exercise longer, harder, with far less muscular strain after, say, 30 minutes after having chewed on one of these things and consumed it. And it's beets and grapeseed, basically, and one of their proprietary formula, and grapeseed oil. And it produces a noticeable effect. Even the lozenges produce a noticeable effect. And so you can see them in the veins and arteries and stuff. By the way, if you see me flushing red, it's because it's early in the day here, and I just took my niacin, and I'm one of those people that flush on niacin. Yes, I know they're non-flushing kinds of niacin, but I kind of like the effect. And I don't itch or anything with it, so. It's not a big deal to me. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here, the nitric oxide therapy, is again, in addition to all the other crap I'm doing. And that other stuff that I'm doing includes all the medicinal mushrooms, the optimal vitamin therapy, the GCMAF, from GCMafPlus. And I'm using the spray, and then and then also the creams as well. And the GCMAF product is not just for cancer. Because it boosts the hunter-killer cells in your system, it affects all kinds of things, including infections of various different forms. So something to be aware of. Now, GCMAF and nitric oxide, while you may feel a nearly instant response from these things. So the first time I tried one of these little chewy deals and then went out and exercised, I noticed right away, geez, I'm able to go a lot longer. It feels less strain. I'm able to accomplish more, et cetera, et cetera. So I noticed an effect the very first time. But really, the effect on both of these products is long-term. It's one of these things very much like the medicinal mushrooms where the effect on you will be as powerful or more powerful a year into taking it than it is in the first week. And it has to do with the nature of being so depleted that you perceive a big bump, but that big bump is just a little rise over your depleted condition. And later on, when you're way up here, you'll get a smaller bump out of it, but the overall effect will be much longer lasting and much more powerful as you go forward. So just something to bring up. Now, the other thing I'm doing beyond all of this is I'm adequately exercising as well. And so that's why this Hypervibe thing is up here. So, before I get into that, let me say that GCMafPlus also produces a product for memory. It's a neuropeptide. It's delivered in the same cream container, and it also is very powerful. I've used this. It's so powerful you can't use it 7 days a week. I mean, it'll affect you. And what it is a I don't want to say a memory recovery cream, but I suffered from anesthesia amnesia, and that shit can go on for years. It has to do with the chemicals that were used on me nearly a year ago. And 11 days, or 11 days shy of a year ago. And the anesthesia amnesia can affect your ability to recover memory. It's not like the memories are lost, but you have to reconnect to them, and then all of a sudden they flood back, and it's like, okay, I get this now. Anyway, the GCMAF plus neuropeptide memory cream, as I say, is quite powerful. And it has interesting effects, and I'm certainly going to pursue my exploration of that product. I've been using it intermittently. I've got so much else going on that I haven't formulated a particular protocol or study onto how I'm going to analyze its effects on me. But I do know that I do feel those effects. And anybody that has memory issues certainly should have a look at this neuropeptide delivered through a cream from the GCMafPlus.com guys. So just take GCMAF, put PLUS.com on the end of it, and you can find these products on their webpage. Okay, so enough with that stuff and enough with the immunotherapy. We're going to take a brief divergence into the exercise component of all of this. So when the cancer was raging on me, I went through a number of years where over the course of like 10 years, I was just unable to exercise. It just went from the point where I was doing Aikido 4 days a week, which is an incredibly intense martial art, and kept going on down. And finally, I had to drop Aikido. And it was because I told myself at the time it was because I had too much other stuff going on, too many people were sick, and so on. But factually, it was because I just couldn't maintain the energy level, and it was because the cancer had grown to the point where it was sucking down on my resources significantly. That continued through those last 10 years of having that cancer to the point where I was not even able to exercise at home. That really bothered me, and it should have been a clue, but it was already, the cancer at that point was undoubtedly already affecting my thinking, my ability to analyze my way out of my own situation. And so but the point of all of this is that so let me get to the final thing. So it would have been 9 days before I had the emergency cancer surgery. I presented myself to a gastroenterologist, and I happened to be weighed as one of the things that they did. Now, I was presenting with all the classic signs for colon cancer in a very advanced stage. And one of those indicators was that I was down to under 140 pounds. And so I'd lost well over 35 pounds from my peak. And that was all muscle. Wasn't like I had any fat at all at my peak, because I was doing Aikido 4 times a week, 3 hours or more per attendance, and I was doing my daily 2.5 mile dog runs, all these other kind of things, right? So I was in good shape. Anyway, so I lose all this muscle mass, and I was shocked when I survived the cancer surgery to discover just how emaciated I was, just how sort of demuscled. And it was a real shock, and it's been almost a year, 11 days shy of a year, but I wasn't even able to start exercising again until probably December, and that was intermittently. I'd done some in October and November getting set up for it, but it wasn't even exercise if you're only doing it once a week, right? That was just playing around. That was just getting the feel of it again. And so in December, I sort of started settling back into it. So I've been at it maybe, but it wasn't like in December I was doing it even 2 days a week. But I was consistently doing 1 day a week, that sort of thing. And so it's been gradually ongoing that I've been able to build up my tolerance for exercise until I'm at this point where I go out every day and I make sure that I do the what I think of as the minimal amount of exercise, because exercise is one of those things that is extremely correlated with survival, long-term survival from all kinds of cancers. It doesn't matter what the cancer is. Exercise is a good anti-cancer approach to life. And everybody that does lots of damn exercise in all of these different studies has a much higher degree of survival than those people that don't exercise. And so I've gotten, as per all of this, I've gotten deep into the research for the physiology, the study of the physical form of the human, and what works and what doesn't. And so I've put together an exercise routine. Now, one of the things I had done was about 2012, I had purchased this device, the Hypervibe. I'd already been into a number of years of declining ability to exercise due to the cancer, due to the unknown cancer and the inability to diagnose anything, to figure out what was going on with me. And so I thought, okay, I need to really hammer on this. And so I bought myself a Hypervibe. Now, these are machines that vibrate you at a very fast pace, such that you become, theoretically, you're exercising at a higher level of gravity. So it's as though you're doing exercises in 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 extra layers of gravity on you. Now, this sort of is a misnomer, but it comes from the origin of these machines, which was on the Russian space station, where they used them to maintain muscle mass in space. And it in essence produced an artificial gravity field under which they exercised, and it was found to be very good. These machines are extremely good for aging people. They're extremely good for recovery from all different kinds of injuries and accidents. And what they do is they actually vibrate you on a plate that has some mass to it. So that vibration of the plate itself creates a small gravity field around what's going on. And by small, we mean hardly detectable. But you feel it, but you couldn't really probably detect it with gravity field detectors that we have now, because they're just not sensitive enough. But the effect of these things is to be, of the Hypervibe and other similar gravity machines, also known as whole body vibration machines, is to move your muscles for you really, 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 really fast, so that you're actually contracting them and expanding them at speeds that you could never achieve. So you could theoretically do hours worth of exercise in minutes because they're going to vibrate you so fast. Now, these things work. I know personally that they work at a very nice, at a very good level. My Hypervibe had the crap kicked out of it over the course of these past couple of years. And as I say, it's 7 years old now. So I even ended up having to replace a motherboard because I'd burn out the motherboard on it. And, you have to understand that they had to shield the motherboards from the vibration of the machine itself. So degradation on these things is inevitable. But they're quite nice. I've got one here behind me. Let's tilt this down, and you can see, there we go. And so the Hypervibe is basically this little platform down here. I'll turn this on a minute. They're just noisy as hell. But the key to, and then there's a stand you can hang on to, and then this keypad thing up here. And the thing to do is to start it and then get up to, you want to get at least to 18 hertz, okay? And the reason that you want to get up to that 18 hertz, by the way, these machines are so powerful, they don't want you to do them more than 10 minutes at a time. You got to have breaks in there to allow your muscles to relax. And after I do it for 10 minutes, my muscles might still be contracting for a half an hour later. And so I'm going to just stand on it for a second, and you'll see what the effect is. I don't know if you can really see. I don't know if you can really see that vibration in the calves. But So as may be understood here, necessarily, it's going to work first on your feet, calves and legs, and work on up. You get it to where it's in your core, and it works up to where it's in your shoulders and so on. And you can always put your hands on it, as I do. And so I have hands on the plate exercises that are actually variants on yoga, plank, crow, and a few others. And then I've got the standing exercises in which you do the squats and this kind of thing. And the effect is quite good. So now I do a number of other exercises, all right? So I do the place is miserably dirty out here because I'm still moving in. Let me get some of these guys out of the way, okay? Hang on a second. We'll take rid of that one. Yeah. What in the hell? All right, that's my next